Starving mother pleads for help. His unexpected act of kindness transformed 100 lives forever. Sarah Dawson scrubbed the counter at the diner, the scent of grease and coffee clinging to her apron like a second skin. With each swipe, she masked the tension knotting in her stomach. Her rent was due, and the piles of bills on her kitchen table loomed like shadows waiting to suffocate her. She had been late on payments before. She couldn't do it again. The thought of her 2 children, Lily and Ben, going without was unbearable. Yet here she was, a waitress juggling 2 jobs, hoping for tips that only seemed to cover each day's meager needs. Desperation clawed at her, while a mask of smiles hid sleepless nights filled with worry. But one day felt different. As she rushed through her double shift, her old car, a rust bucket of a sedan, stuttered and wheezed before finally giving up, sputtering to a halt in the diner's empty parking lot. Each failed attempt to restart the engine tightened the vise around her throat. What would she do now? What if she couldn't get to work? Her mind spiraled through the logistics. No paycheck, no groceries, more bills piling up. Panic set in as she ran a trembling hand through her hair, fighting tears she refused to shed in front of anyone. Starving mother, desperate for help. The tagline whispered in her thoughts, the type of headlines she had seen flash across screens, never thinking she'd identify so easily. Slumped over her steering wheel, frustration poured from her. She couldn't fail her kids. She had promised them a better life, a home with food, love, and opportunity. Before the day could spiral even further, she overheard a conversation between 2 diners. That principal from the old school? He's living down the street, one farmer mentioned, shaking his head. What does he know about community now? Mark Whitman, the retired principal, sat alone, his thoughts a tangle of regret and uncertainty. Framed by thick glasses and a thinning mane of gray hair, he had been seeking a new direction to fill his days. The judgments of his past pierced him like arrows thrown by those who felt wronged by his past mistakes. As he caught Sarah's muted sobs between breaths, something stirred within him. Despite the whispers and pointed looks that usually found him, he couldn't turn away. He watched her, wrestling with her predicament, her strength on display, and yet just beneath the surface lay deep fraying threads. He wanted to help, but would the townsfolk understand? Could he even bear their judgment again? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Sarah wiped her eyes, Mark decided. "Excuse me?" he called, his voice breaking through her storm. She turned to him, surprise briefly eclipsing her vulnerability. "I couldn't help but notice. I'm good with engines. Maybe I can help you with your car?" Her brow furrowed, caught between gratitude and disbelief. But even more, as trust teetered on the brink, he astounded her. Had the wind really shifted? Could this man step in when even her own heart hesitated? Just as a flurry of hope ignited in her chest, shadows crept across the diner. A heavy silence filled the air, cut by unspoken judgment. Mark's fear stirred within him too. Could offering his help lead to ridicule again? Doubt curled around his resolve like a vice. The stakes climbed with every heartbeat. Could they withstand the weight of the past and be shaped anew? Just then, the dull sound of a siren echoed through the town, an ominous reminder that salvation might come at a cost they both hadn't foreseen. The clang of a bell rang through the diner, and the tension hung thick between Sarah and Mark. In that moment, their gazes locked, unraveling their unspoken fears. Panic gripped Sarah as she weighed her options. Accepting Mark's help might mean exposing her vulnerability, a risk she wasn't sure she could take. Yet the ache of desperation pushed her to consider it. "Are you sure you want to help?" she asked, her voice wavering. "Honestly, it's the least I can do," he replied, his sincerity grounding her fluttering heart. Sarah blinked at the unexpected kindness. It was foreign, yet the warmth of it stirred something deep within her. A flicker of faith, perhaps? But the weight of judgment lingered like a shadow. "I'll go get my tools," Mark offered, rising from his seat. As he exited the diner, Sarah's thoughts spiraled. She could either keep tending to her pride, turning away help from a stranger, or allow herself to accept that this might be the lifeline she needed. What had she always told her children? That strength sometimes meant knowing when to lean on others. A gust of resolute desperation glanced against her heart, pushing her toward acceptance. Arriving at the parking lot, Mark's old truck rumbled as he opened the toolbox in the back. Sarah watched him forge ahead, determination dancing in his every movement. He didn't waste time. Where she saw failure, he saw potential. It was hard to ignore how the shadows of doubt began to lift just a little. As Mark tinkered under the hood, his hands deft and sure, Sarah's thoughts wandered back to the many late nights spent grappling with the chaos around her. The thought of not being able to provide for her children had become a near constant weight she carried, yet the risk of vulnerability was always looming above her, like a dark storm cloud. Could this be the moment she changed course? "Got it!" Mark's exclamation pulled her from her reverie. The engine turned over with a sputter, then roared to life, a vibrant sound that echoed through the lots like a heartbeat. Relief washed over Sarah, leaving her breathless. "You did it!" "I just gave it a little love," he chuckled, wiping his hands on his faded jeans. "Thank you," she said, the words casting away the last threads of her hesitation. A genuine smile broke across her face, illuminating the storm that had darkened her spirit for so long. However, beneath the gratitude, doubt skimmed the surface of her consciousness. Would this small act open the door to greater vulnerability? As the two stood in the parking lot, the murmur of gossiping passers-by reached them. Sarah's heart skipped. Would they witness her moment of weakness? She feared the judgment, yet she also felt an undeniable shift in her perspective. Mark had stepped out of his own discomfort to offer her a hand, and his unwavering support ignited an ember of resolve in her heart. It complemented her yearning to become a better version of herself, both as a mother and as an individual. "Would you be willing to help me more?" she found herself asking, the vulnerability seeping into her voice. The words tasted foreign, but as they broke free, her resolve solidified. Every moment spent grappling with pride led her here, in this very place, this significant crossroads. Mark looked at her, surprise flooding his features, but then he nodded. "Absolutely, I'd be happy to." As Sarah's pulse quickened, with bittersweet gratitude, her mind raced forward. What assistance might they cultivate together? Uncertainty slipped away like leaves borne by the autumn breeze, and a cautious hope unfurled within her. Could this be the start of a new chapter? As the sirens faded into the distance, Sarah felt the weight of her circumstances shift slightly. She was scared, but she would learn to embrace the uncomfortable. This initial step marked the beginning of a long journey, a revelation of newfound potential intertwined with her own fears and insecurities. The next hurdle lay before her, waiting for her to confront not just her doubts, but uncover the resilience that had been a light all along. She took a steadying breath. But was she ready for what lay beyond this act of kindness? Would it reshape her life in ways she was unprepared for? The answer hung heavy in the air, just out of reach. Sarah's thoughts swirled like errant leaves caught in the wind as she stood beside Mark. The roaring engine felt like a heartbeat, yet beneath that strength lay a lingering uncertainty. Would she really allow this man to become a part of her story? To accept his help was to peel back layers of her carefully constructed facade. Her instincts screamed to retreat, to gather her defenses. Yet she had just tasted the sweetness of vulnerability. "What exactly did you have in mind?" Mark asked, stepping forward and tilting his head, a friendly invitation for her to share her plan. The question knocked her off balance, dragging forth emotions that pushed against her ribs. Perhaps this was her chance to rewrite her narrative, to transform the mundane struggle into something more meaningful. "I think I could use some help fixing things around the house, finding a job. There's a lot that I can't seem to juggle alone." The way the words tumbled from her lips felt like both liberation and abandonment. Mark's brow furrowed as he processed her request, and she felt the weight of judgment pressing against her, even from him. Would he view her as weak? "All right," he said slowly. "Let's make a list. I can help you get a handle on things." His calm demeanor enveloped her in a sense of safety. In that moment, a spark ignited in Sarah's heart, a defiance against the years of heavy silence. "It's not just about fixing things. I need to regain my footing. I need to believe I can still provide for my kids, that I still have something to offer." Mark looked at her, an unexpected understanding glimmering in his eyes. "You do have something to offer," he replied, his voice steady. "Helping someone like me step out of my comfort zone is a significant thing. For a heartbeat, Her mind reeled at his perspective. Was he really viewing this willingness to accept his support as a trait of mutual growth? Uneasiness ebbed away, colored by a tinge of confidence. If his first act of kindness had reshaped her outlook, what other revelations awaited them? As they plotted tasks to tackle together, the atmosphere shifted. It became less about her failures and more about possibilities. They compiled a list, and with each item they jotted down, her sense of agency grew clearer. A leaky faucet, untamed weeds in the garden, and drafty windows. All mundane but necessary repairs, a reflection of her current life. Let's start with what feels manageable. The faucet, for instance. If we get that fixed, it'll show you that one small step leads to others, Mark suggested, pushing a stray strand of hair back from his forehead. She nodded, her mind weighing the implications of this journey. Could she truly flip the narrative? For years, she had been consumed by the idea of failure, but here was a doorway, not just to fixing her home, but perhaps also her spirit. Okay, she breathed, her resolve sharpening. Let's start this. Perhaps I can even look into some skills training alongside the repairs. I used to love working with my hands. A flicker of excitement danced within her chest. The vision of herself, no longer rooted in despair, darted ahead like a mirage shimmering just beyond reach. With every task they tackled, would she find fragments of her old self, those passions long dulled by survival? Mark leaned back against the truck, arms crossed, nonchalant yet encouraging as she pondered this emerging vision. We'll figure it out together, he promised, and for the first time, the phrase didn't feel like empty words. It felt like a pact. However, the reflection loomed. What would her children think of their mother seeking help? Would they see her courage, or would they perceive her inadequacies? This dilemma prickled at her conscience, but the need to transform propelled her forward. Just as they set plans into motion, a call from her past echoed at the edges of her mind, a voice she hadn't heard in years, dredging up old wounds. The past wasn't finished with her yet. Sarah, it whispered, a threat simmering beneath the weight of loss and regret. The stakes were rising. She had taken a step, but now the next leap awaited, one that would demand everything from her. Would she remain steadfast as her past clawed for a foothold? As doubt and determination danced dangerously close, she prepared for the confrontation brewing just beyond the horizon. The time had come to face her fears, yet the specter of her former self loomed larger than ever. Would she embrace her evolution, or would she slip back into the shadows? The answer lay tantalizingly close, a question suspended in the storm of her thoughts. The next morning, the sun cast a soft light through the cracked window panes, illuminating the dust that danced lazily in the air. Sarah felt the warmth against her skin as she rose, but it wasn't enough to stave off the chill settling in her heart. The weight of her unresolved past pressed upon her, and as she brewed coffee, she fought back against the wave of anxiety that threatened to pull her under. Today was supposed to be a fresh start. Mark had promised to come over and tackle the leaky faucet first. Yet, in the back of her mind, doubts festered like stagnant water. What if she couldn't keep up with his expectations? What if accepting his help opened a chasm of vulnerability she couldn't navigate? As she thumbed through the stack of bills, reminders of her responsibilities and failures, an old photograph slipped to the floor. It was taken years ago, showing a younger Sarah, joy radiating from her face as she cradled her newborn. That girl had dreams, ambitions, but life had chipped away at them like a relentless tide. The vivid happy moments had dulled into routine and struggle. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts, grounding her back into reality. Mark's presence at the door bore a comforting familiarity, yet it also ignited a spark of apprehension. What would he see in her? Would he notice the fraying edges of her carefully maintained facade? "Hey, ready to dive in?" he said, an easy smile gracing his features. "Sure," she replied, her voice steadying as she reclaimed her composure. As they moved outside to the faucet, the morning air filled with the scent of damp earth, a reminder of the repairs awaiting both her home and her spirit. Together they worked through the task, Mark guiding her hands and explaining the function of every tool with patience. As she tightened the fittings, something blossomed within her, a sense of competency that had long been buried under layers of self-doubt. "You're getting the hang of it," Mark said, watching her with an encouraging grin. "It feels good," she admitted, and the heartfelt sincerity of the statement startled her. Was it truly possible that she could feel accomplished in tangible tasks? The mere act of holding a wrench transformed her vulnerability into a weapon against her past, and with each twist of the handle, she dismantled the years of shame she carried. However, with every victory emerged the unrelenting shadows of her past. Thoughts of her former self intruded like weeds in a garden, and just as Mark asked for help, with a particularly stubborn bolt, her mind wandered back to that whispered call, a reminder that not everything was mended. The voice echoed in her mind. Sarah, you can't change what happened. You can't escape who you are. You are weak. Shaking her head, she forced those thoughts away. The choices she made were hers alone. She had the power to redefine them, to mold them into something constructive rather than debilitating. The task before her wasn't solely about fixing a faucet. It was a metaphorical restoration of her own life. Let's take a break, Mark suggested, wiping his brow. They settled on the porch steps, the sound of birds chirping acting as a temporary balm for her frayed nerves. Do you ever think about how our pasts shape us? She ventured, testing the waters of vulnerability once more. He nodded slowly, the flicker of understanding in his eyes prompting her to share more. Sometimes I think about everything I've done wrong. Every time I trip up, it's like a reminder that I'm not who I hope to be. Maybe it's not about erasing those parts, he responded. What if it's about using them to fuel your growth? His perspective illuminated a path she hadn't considered. She felt the tension ease in her chest, replaced with a nascent hope. Yet the specter of her past remained, a silent predator waiting for opportunity. As the day wore on, they shifted tasks, cranking up the resonance of laughter with each minor triumph. They had overcome the first hurdle together. But as dusk settled, she couldn't shake the feeling of something impending, a storm brewing just beyond her sight. The reminder was undeniable. Her past wasn't finished with her yet. Would she be brave enough to face the ghost of her former self again? Every step they took towards fixing the house resonated with her journey of renewal. But as her mind spiraled deeper into that ambiguous territory, she realized she would need to confront her fears head-on. As Mark glanced her way, concern etched on his face, she whispered her next challenge to the cosmos. Will I come out unscathed, or will I falter under the weight of my history? The uncertainty loomed large, ready to impose its will on her newly found resolve. Would Sarah have the courage to chase the shadows away, or would they pull her back into a familiar abyss? The next confrontation waited, ready to test her limits and her growth. The days that followed were a cascade of revelations for Sarah. Each morning brought a fresh day, imbued with both promise and trepidation. As she moved through her routines, attending to the faucet, sorting through bills, and into deeper realms of her emotions, she felt the weight of hesitation tugging at her heels. Mark came over often, and with each visit, he offered far more than just a helping hand. While repairing the plumbing or painting walls, he revealed his own vulnerabilities. Over cups of coffee, he spoke about his childhood struggles, the relentless pursuit to prove to himself that he could rise above them. Sarah listened intently, admiring his willingness to share, yet wrestling with her compulsion to reveal her own scars. What would he think if he knew the depths of her failure, the nature of her fears? As they worked, Sarah noticed herself mirroring Mark's resilience. His earnestness ignited a flicker of strength within her. She began to take small risks, participating in discussions, expressing opinions, even sharing laughter at absurd mishaps of their tasks. One chilly afternoon, as they evaluated paint color options for the living room, Mark leaned in. "You've got a knack for this, you know," he said, as she held up hues against the wall. "Have you ever thought about doing something creative with this?" His words struck a chord, and that familiar whisper returned. "You don't have what it takes," it taunted, but clawing through that inner dissent required a confrontation she wasn't prepared for. Instead, a smile crept onto Sarah's face. "I used to love painting," she confessed, her own echo of surprise dancing in her mind. "I don't know if I can call myself creative anymore." "Why not? I think you underestimate yourself," he replied, his gaze steady and unwavering. She felt a surge of irritation and inspiration all at once. Undermine herself? Did she not deserve a chance at something more than mere survival? That evening, after a hard day's work, Sarah sat with the vibrant paint choices spread across her dining table. Her hand hovered over a brush, an instrument to express centuries of buried aspiration. Could she dare to dip it into color? The allure was palpable, yet fear encased her like an armor. The painting felt like it could expose every vulnerability, as though it were a personal bulldozer to accurate self-discovery. Just as doubt crept back in, memories flooded her mind of late-night art classes, of laughter and shared brushes with friends before hardship forged her solitude. Flickers of an artist still lingered in her soul, and brushing them aside now felt like denying part of herself. In that instant, determination ignited. "I'll try," she whispered to the walls that had witnessed her struggles. Each stroke seemed to shed layers of her past and lightened her spirit. She painted feverishly until twilight blurred the space. Colors clashed and combined to form landscapes of her own making. For the first time in years, she felt the thrill of creation pulsating through her veins. Mark returned the next day to find her nestled in a world of color. She sprinkled pigments onto the canvas, an invisible thread stitching together fragments of a long-vanished identity. He stood in silence, eyes widening in awe. "This is beautiful, Sarah. You've got talent," he exclaimed, his voice a melody of recognition. Embarrassment flickered through her, but it was swiftly replaced with pride. The realization poured over her. This was more than a canvas. It was a transformative moment. Each now visible bruise of her history etched the contours of the artwork, even as it became a testimony of her resilience. Yet beneath this renewed sense of self, doubt loomed like a thundercloud, threatening to rain down on her progress. Would this burst of creativity shield her from the storm that awaited, or merely be a feeble flicker in a burgeoning tempest? As she pondered the depth of her next steps, a notification buzzed on her phone, the invitation to a community art show several towns over. Her heart raced, not out of excitement, but pure terror. The doubt whispered ferociously, "What if no one appreciates your work?" Taking a breath, Sarah made a choice. This time, she wouldn't run. Perhaps it was time to embrace what she had feared most, exposing her art, her past, and ultimately herself. Would presenting her pieces bring validation or unravel her newfound strength? The moment stood at a precipice. Would Sarah take the leap into a whirlpool of possibilities, or would she retreat back into obscurity? The answer rested just beyond her fear, and the event loomed closer, a mirror of her evolving journey. The more Sarah thought about the invitation, the heavier the weight of indecision pressed upon her. It felt as if her heart was caught in a tumultuous tide, one moment propelled by exhilaration, the next by an overwhelming urge to recede into anonymity. Mark's words echoed in her mind that she underestimated herself. Yet, in the face of a call to showcase her work, those words felt contradictory, swimming through a sea of doubt. She spent the next few days wrestling internally. Each attempt to prepare for the art show, gathering her pieces, refining her ideas, visualizing the event, was tainted by incessant self-recrimination. The nagging voice persisted. What if they dislike her work? What if she embarrasses herself in front of people who know what real talent looks like? Isolation wrapped around her tighter, and with each passing moment, it became an even more overpowering foe. Throughout it all, Mark remained a steady presence. He encouraged her movements, provided feedback on her canvases, and joined her during introspective pauses. One evening, as they sat amidst splatters of paint and half-finished pieces, Sarah clenched her jaw, trying to silence the cacophony in her head. "What if showcasing my paintings only proves how inadequate I am?" she blurted out. "Or," Mark countered, his voice calm like a warm summer evening, "it could show how brave you are. Putting yourself out there takes guts. Do you think others don't fear rejection?" His perspective struck a chord, and Sarah sensed a shift within herself. The prospect of her art being seen as a reflection of her abilities transformed into the idea that it could symbolize her courage to confront adversity. That shift nudged her towards growth, but the road remained steep. Encouraged by her newfound clarity, Sarah enrolled in a local workshop focused on presentation skills. Initially, her palms burned with anxiety as she prepared to stand before strangers. How would she communicate the emotions behind her work? What if her voice trembled with insecurity? Yet, she steeled her resolve. This was a step toward reclaiming agency over her journey. The workshop opened her eyes to the nuances of expression, teaching her to embrace her vulnerability as strength. Each session peeled back layers of apprehension. Slowly, confidence replaced her dread, parallel to her efforts in painting. She began to view the notion of presenting as an expansion of her artistry, not a foreclosure on herself. Weeks passed, and the art show day loomed near. The chatter of excitement filled the air, but within Sarah, storms raged. Harrowing thoughts led her to consider not attending at all. On one particularly trying night, guilt laden on her chest, she rummaged through old photographs of herself from happier times, each image a reminder of joyous moments when creativity had flowed freely. Revisiting those memories reignited the initial passion that painting had once bestowed upon her, urging her to trust the process. The morning of the show, she gathered her pieces, carefully scrutinizing each brushstroke, relishing the stories they embodied. That fire within her surged as she pinned photos of herself with her friends from years past to her easel, creating a tapestry of connection for every onlooker to witness, illustrating the journey that brought her here. Feeling her heart quicken, Sarah arrived at the venue. As she stood under soft lights illuminating her work, a surge of vulnerability washed over her. Each person who approached was a chance for a different kind of interaction. It was not simply about the art. They were engaging with her dreams, her fears, her journey. Just as the first guests began to gather, she spotted someone in the distance, a figure with familiar warmth and support. Her breath caught for a moment, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, she realized that her fears wouldn't hold dominion over her anymore. She wouldn't cower in the shadows of her artistry or herself. As the first person approached her canvas, excitement flickered beneath her skin. Would she flourish in this moment, or would she stumble and fall? The show had become a pivotal battle, not against the perceptions of others, but the interference of her own fear. With a deep breath, Sarah welcomed her destiny. The crowd's murmur became a wave of sound, her heart echoing louder as she prepared to step forth. And just as she began to engage, a shadow from her past lurked near the entry, someone she never expected to see again. "What are you doing here?" The voice sent ripples of uncertainty through her, stirring old anxieties to life. The sight of Jared, her former mentor and a stark reminder of her painful past, gripped Sarah like a vice. Memories flooded her mind, the harsh criticisms veiled in praise, the moments that had driven a wedge between her ambitions and her self-esteem. The interconnectedness of their history didn't just magnify her anxiety, it threatened to siphon away the hard-earned resolve she had built leading up to this moment. "Sarah," he said, a hint of surprise in his voice that belied the wretchedness she felt. "I didn't know you were showing here." The world around her made noises that felt distant, as if she were underwater. Every heartbeat echoed against the walls of her chest, a reminder of her vulnerability, now magnified by his presence. She had worked so hard to dismantle her insecurities, yet they clawed at her with renewed vigor. "What do you want?" she managed, her voice far stronger than she felt. Jared's eyes softened, yet his influence remained dangerously potent, intertwining with her genuine desire for success. "I came to see your work. I've heard great things." His words felt like a double-edged sword. Encouragement from an art critic who had once made her feel small could either validate her efforts or deepen her wounds. I'm not ready to discuss anything," Sarah replied, her determination battling against the remnants of fear. She glanced towards Mark, who stood a few feet away, watching intently. She needed his support now more than ever. "Then let me look at your work." "I'm genuinely interested," Jared pressed, stepping closer, his demeanor almost disarming. As he perused her pieces, Sarah felt raw. The wisp of doubt summoned flashes of old narratives, the skepticism that once enveloped her creativity. How naive she had been to think she might be free from his shadow. She focused intently on the wall behind him, breathing through burgeoning anxiety and reminding herself why she was here. While Jared examined her canvases, Sarah observed the guests milling about, their faces animated by appreciation. For the first time, she recognized that her art elicited reactions beyond her internal turmoil. The essence of her journey, the pain, growth, and revelation, was now on public display. "Your use of color here is striking. It captures a sense of longing, don't you think?" Jared's voice floated back to her. As much as she wanted to dismiss his commentary outright, she found a flicker of truth in his words. It meant something. They were moments of her life. Her battles splashed across canvas in a way that resonated with others. Still, the thought of Jared's opinion stung more than flattered. The tension crackled around them, a spotlight illuminating every unsaid word, every trembling thought. Mark approached, standing next to Sarah like an anchor amidst the storm. "Can I help you?" he asked Jared, a note of caution lacing his voice. In that moment of support, Sarah felt the shift within her once more. She had a choice: either collapse under the uncertainty that her past evoked, or rise above it, reclaiming her narrative. She took a step forward, each movement a splay of defiance against Jared's historical hold. "You know your opinion matters, but I won't let it define my worth anymore," she asserted, her voice steady against the tremors of her doubts. Mark smiled at her, a silent acknowledgement of her strength. The room didn't fall silent, nor did Jared retreat. Instead, a challenge flickered in their exchange. This encounter wasn't merely about art. It became a confrontation with her past, her courage laid bare in front of both the audience and her own demons. Yet there, amidst her defiance, the crowd murmured in approval, drawing her attention. As she turned to face them, the very essence of validation surged through her. Connection flooded between herself, her art, and those who gathered to witness her journey, mingling with the sound of her heart that finally found its rhythm. But just when she began to find her footing, Jared leaned in, his voice lowered and laced with a newfound tension. "You'll need to brace yourself, Sarah. Not everyone is as supportive as you'd like to believe." He cast a glance across the room, where a figure loomed in the shadows, unsettling familiarity trailing behind. Sarah's breath caught again, the surge of adrenaline sneaking back into her veins. The past was still there, alive and threatening. With her fight ignited but the stakes rising, Sarah faced the crossroads once more. She could either unravel or embrace what lay ahead, and with both Mark and Jared watching, the moment for true growth had never been clearer. What would she do next? The tension thrumming in her heart promised more than she could anticipate, inviting her further into unexplored territory. The air thickened with unspoken tensions as Sarah turned her gaze toward the figure in the shadows. Her past was not content with lurking quietly. It had begun to stir and threaten her hard-won sense of self. Each heartbeat resonated within her, echoing questions that begged for answers she didn't have. Who was this figure? Was it someone she had hoped never to see again? She felt Mark's presence solidify beside her, grounding her as if his mere proximity could fortify her against the onslaught of memories and feelings. "Do you know them?" he asked, concern etched across his features. Instead of voicing her fears, she shook her head slowly, her mind racing with possibilities. The drive to stand tall was strong within her, but the uncertainty was a stark reminder of vulnerability. Suddenly, all the lessons learned felt frail against the weight of the past. "Focus on the moment, Sarah. Look at your art and how it speaks to them," Mark urged softly, gesturing towards the viewers who continued to appreciate her work. They were seeing her, not the girl defined by Jared's feedback, but an artist with valuable stories to share. It was trust in this process that she needed to cling to. Resisting the lure of her history, she took another steadying breath, deliberately shifting her focus toward the vibrant palette of her canvases. Each color splashed across the fabric reflected pieces of her journey: longing, loss, growth. It was as if the art was a sentinel, whispering gently to her, urging her to embrace the moment and the recognition she had so long desired. "Excuse me?" a voice called out from the crowd, interrupting her thoughts. A woman stepped forward, her face radiant, eyes wide with inspiration. "I just have to tell you, your piece on resilience moved me to tears. It reflects the struggles I've faced in my own life." Sarah's heart swelled. Here, right in front of her, was the very affirmation she craved. This encounter was a microcosm of the connection she sought with her audience. Jared's shadow paled in comparison to that private victory, a reminder that it was indeed possible to create impactful work. In that moment, she realized she didn't need Jared's approval. She needed her own. She alone could assign her narrative its rightful value. "Thank you so much," Sarah replied, her voice steady, rehearsed in the face of fear yet tinged with warmth. "Each brushstroke holds a piece of my journey. I'm so glad it resonated with you." The woman nodded appreciatively, immersing herself back into the crowd, while Sarah's confidence began to blossom anew. Jared watched, a calculating expression crossing his features, but she refused to let it dissuade her. Instead, she recognized it as a challenge. She would rise above his assessment, no matter how deeply rooted the memories were. But then the figure in the shadows moved closer, emerging into the dim light of the gallery. It was Caleb, a figure from her past she had hoped to leave behind. The memories associated with him were drenched in betrayal, and now that very betrayal stood in stark contrast to her newfound resolve. Heart racing, Sarah found herself at a crossroads again. "Why now?" she mouthed silently, frustration boiling beneath the surface. She could feel dread wrapping around her like a shroud, but she forced herself to breathe, gripping the edge of her nearby artwork for support. Mark caught her gaze, reading the unease etched across her features. "You okay?" he asked, voice low yet steady. "No," she admitted, the vulnerability stripping away some of her bravado. "I thought I was ready, but—" "Then let's be ready together," he said, and she could hear the resolve in his voice. The moment held a power ripe with opportunity for growth. As she squared her shoulders and confronted the figure that threatened her peace, she understood that this was more than an encounter with Caleb. It was a choice to recognize her own strength, to dismantle the foundations of her anxiety, and to reclaim the narrative both Jared and Caleb had tried to dictate. "Caleb," she said, projecting confidence into this shaky anxiety gnawing at her core, "we need to talk." But as she took a step forward, she realized that this wasn't just an opportunity to confront Caleb. It was a redefinition of her own values and worth. The weight of the moment pressed in around her as she prepared to face this chapter of her life, every heartbeat a reminder that she was no longer the girl who sought approval, but a woman ready to carve her own path regardless of the ghosts that haunted her. What she didn't know was that this confrontation would upend everything she thought she knew about herself, urging hidden strengths to the surface. Sarah took a deep breath, her eyes locked with Caleb's, whose expression was a complicated mix of regret and defiance. For years, fear had governed her reactions to him, his very presence reawakening buried anxieties. Yet here she stood, no longer drowning in his shadow, but forging her own identity. "Why now?" she repeated, this time loud enough for him to hear. A myriad of emotions flickered across Caleb's face. "I came to see how you were doing. I've thought about you, about everything that happened," he said, his voice faltering as if grappling with his own reasoning. "Why did you feel you had the right to show up? You don't get to escape everything and one day decide to reappear. The past doesn't just vanish because you will it to." She shot back, her heart racing. Each word felt liberating, as if she were chiseling away at the granite of her old self. Caleb shifted his weight, clearly searching for the right words. "I made mistakes, Sarah. I was an idiot and I regret hurting you. No one asked you to regret it. You made choices that impacted my life and left me questioning my worth, my art, everything," she retorted, the simmering rage in her voice empowering her. Mark's presence solidified beside her, a comforting reminder that she wasn't alone. As Caleb's tension radiated toward them, Sarah realized this was a chance not only for confrontation, but also for clarification. "I'm not the same person you knew. Your actions shaped me, but I own my journey now." Surprise spread across Caleb's features. "I didn't come to hurt you again. Stop," she interrupted, her voice steadying, each syllable infused with the weight of clarity. "Do you think you can just walk back in and make everything better with words? You don't get to rewrite our story." A silence settled, thick and heavy with memories laced with bitterness. She was acutely aware of every viewer's eyes drifting toward them, watching, waiting. The tension transformed into an audience for her reclamation. "I'm sorry," Caleb said again, softer this time. "I've spent a lot of time regretting my choices." "We all do," Sarah shot back, an intense fierceness propelling her resolve. "But regret isn't enough. You don't have the right to make me feel small just because you feel remorse. I've earned my place, and it doesn't include your narrative of me." Her voice rang out with a confidence that stunned her, defying all remnants of insecurity that had tormented her. As her words hung in the air, she sensed an important shift. Caleb's anguish clashed with her independence, igniting the speed of her heart. Mark placed a reassuring hand on Sarah's back, silently urging her to continue. For the first time, she focused on what was within her control, the message she wished to send, the boundaries she needed to set. "Regardless of our past, I'm moving forward. I found my voice, my vision. You can't take that from me anymore," she asserted, feeling the veracity of her transformation ripple through her. Caleb seemed to shrink back, processing her strength and the distance she'd created. "Is there anything else you want to say?" she pressed, her composure forbidding him a place in her mind or heart. "No," he finally murmured, defeated but perhaps enlightened. "I just wanted to tell you that I hope you find happiness." His words resonated strangely, echoing her own pursuit for peace, for validation. But they were ramblings of an outsider now. They flickered with insincerity, detached from the journey she had begun alone. As he stepped away into the crowded gallery, Sarah felt a rush of relief, coupled with a realization. The confrontation had not just been a confrontation, it was a personal reaffirmation, a reconnection with the parts of herself long buried. She had spoken the truth, delineating a boundary instead of a plea for belonging. Exhaling slowly, she turned to find Mark's eyes shining with pride. "I knew you could do it." "Thank you for being here," she replied, the weight of their moment breaking into a gentle smile. She knew this was merely one of many steps in reclaiming her story, but she felt empowered. The encounter with Caleb had energized her, igniting further resolve to tell her story on her own terms. But as the evening wore on, the undercurrents of uncertainty buzzed within her. What else would she need to confront to fully reclaim her narrative? The question loomed, twisting itself into her resolve for the way forward. She felt invigorated yet aware that more battles awaited her. As the gallery began to ebb with guests, Sarah turned toward her canvases, wondering what lingering pains would bubble to the surface next. The moment of truth had just begun to unfurl. With the gallery quieting down to a gentle hum, Sarah found herself standing amidst a sea of possibilities. The weight of the confrontation with Caleb still lingered, but she felt unshackled from the chains of her past, each breath she took anchoring her presence in this new reality. The glow of the evening felt triumphant. Like freshly painted canvases waiting to reveal their stories, she too was on the cusp of renewal. Mark stepped beside her, his aura inviting and supportive, sensing the realization igniting within her. "You've taken a huge step tonight, Sarah," he remarked, pride evident in his voice. His acknowledgement fanned the flames of her burgeoning confidence, setting the stage for acceptance and validation, both from others and from within herself. "I had to," she replied, the conviction coloring her words. "It was less about him and more about my journey. I had to prove to myself that I'm not defined by someone else's choices." Recognizing this transformative moment became a formative pledge. She would never again allow external judgments to delegitimize her aspirations. Each stroke on canvas now held greater meaning, deeper resonance. As she turned to examine the art displayed behind her, something clicked into place. The layers they represented were not merely illustrations. They were reflections of her perseverance, her heart, and the tenacity which had paved her way from chaos into creativity. She had seized her dreams. A tangible sense of accomplishment enveloped her, a feeling she had yearned for yet never truly believed she could achieve. The phone in her pocket buzzed repeatedly, a reminder of invitations still unanswered beyond the gallery. Friends and family expressed their enthusiasm to see her work, but one message floated to the top of her notifications: an offer for a solo exhibition at a local art space, a chance to showcase her journey, her trials, and the transformative beauty she had crafted through paint. The idea sent shivers down her spine, satisfaction mingling with excitement. "Everything all right?" Mark inquired, noticing her stirrings. "I just received an offer for a show," she exclaimed, her heart racing. "I could actually curate my own exhibition. It feels like a culmination of all this work." "Then you absolutely should do it," he replied, encouraging her dreams with firm belief. Each shared sentiment, a building block fortifying the structure of her newfound confidence. "Don't hesitate. This is your moment. Seize it." An unexpected surge of adrenaline coursed through her veins. The possibilities felt endless, yet anchored in achievement. "You know, this journey started when I accepted your help," she said, glancing at Mark. His presence during her exploration unfolded a dimension she had long vacated. "You showed me what it meant to embrace assistance without losing myself in it." What began as a chance encounter turned out to be much more, he confessed, his gaze resting on her with sincere admiration. "You've demonstrated what adaptability and resilience truly look like, Sarah." Taking a steady breath, Sarah reflected. Accepting help had catapulted her into a new narrative of growth. Each task marked progress, but it was also an unveiling, a metamorphosis beyond her previous definition. "Do you remember when I first hesitated to reach out?" she asked him, recalling their early exchanges. "I was so lost within all that fear and despair." Mark nodded, a knowing smile radiating from him. "And look where you are now." In that shared moment, they both embraced the impact of their respective transformations. "This isn't just about my art," she realized aloud, excitement coursing through her. "It symbolizes overcoming. It's about everyone who feels small or inadequate. It's a beacon of hope to say, you can cultivate change if you step into your truth. Each word rolled off her tongue, shimmering with conviction. He grinned as realization washed over them both. Mark's patience and her willingness to relinquish pride birthed a profound connection, shaping pathways toward individual achievement. Before long, as the gallery began to empty, Sarah reconciled her past, acknowledging it was merely a chapter in her larger story. The storyline shifted. She had not only confronted the fears, but she had rewritten herself entirely. The lingering anxiety that had shadowed her years faded into the fabric of self-discovery and empowerment. With each artwork now filled with her spirit and fortitude, she made a silent promise to honor every shade of her journey. This wasn't merely a celebration of art, it was a narrative of reclamation for every person who doubted. It was a promise to unveil more of her life, striving to inspire others also to tap into their wellspring of resilience. As the last few guests trickled out, she stepped away from the brightly lit canvas to stand amidst her creations. The resolve echoed in her heart. She could attain what had once felt out of reach. Today marked the beginning of new achievements awaiting her embrace, each colored with her tenacity and grace. This transformation was no longer a quest. It had become her birthright. "Here's to tomorrow," she whispered, allowing herself to visualize the golden fork in her path filled with opportunities, her heart swelling with pride, confidence, and a profound sense of fulfillment. Now was her time to shine. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. You need to subscribe now. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.